Don Zimmer, dead at the age of 83 on Wednesday night. I'm Kevin Dupont for Globe 10.0 here with Dan Shaughnessy. And Dan, we saw him a lot when he was a skipper here with the Red Sox in the late 70s. And I think it begs the question, how will he be remembered here in Boston? How should he be remembered here in Boston?
Well, I mean, the Bucky Dent game,
Yeah.
78 collapse, that's his lasting legacy in Boston. You know, and again, it's a long time ago, but
Yeah.
it happened. I think anyone paying attention understands, 68 years in baseball,
Yeah.
managed all these teams, he's a baseball lifer, beloved.
Colorful, yeah.
I mean, we saw him. He did win, I think, like 96 games, like 2 or 3 times. He
Right.
never could make the playoffs. It was unbelievable. You
Right.
would make the playoffs today, of course, but he was able to win 99 in 78 and not make the playoffs.
And had the big power lineup with Rice and the home runs, and every day was a treat at the ballpark.
Absolutely.
They weren't playing small ball.
No, 233 home runs in 1977. That team
Yeah.
finishes 2.5 out, tied with the Orioles behind the Yanks. I mean, it was George Scott, Fisk, Lynn, the whole
Yeah.
thing, and it was a lot of fun. And he tended. It would never work today, like where there's a different lineup every day. Every day, it's never the same lineup. Back then, it was the same every
Right,
day.
yeah, and for good reason.
And
Yeah.
and that there's some problems with that. Fisk kind of wore down. Hobson had like the 35 errors or whatever in 78. So he stayed with what he liked.
Yeah, and they went out and they got Torres, and it solidified the rotation. They win all the games. They lose the game in '78 with Bucky Dent. There's also the episode with Bill Lee that a lot of people remember. Bill Lee gets changed, calling him the gerbil.
Yep.
There's a lot of things, but I would say too it would be regrettable. But I think because Sox fans' memories are long, they will get attached to that. I think one of his faults here in town, and he's not alone in this, is an ear a little bit too keen to talk radio at times.
It was the beginning of all that.
Yeah.
He used to listen to Glenn.
We didn't
Orwell
have
so
separate
much.
stations.
Yeah, he drove him crazy. He listened driving in.
Yeah.
Didn't have the thick skin for that. It bothered him. And there was a big doghouse, and Lee was part of that. Lee had won 17 games 3 years in a row, and Lee dominated the Yankees, and he wouldn't pitch him because he hated him. He kind of hated pitchers in general because he'd been hit in the head twice. And, Ryan wrote about that today. Great column by Bob Ryan, today's
Yep.
Globe. Go get it. But I think that he had kind of a bias against that whole element of baseball, and Lee in particular. It was bad.
Yeah.
But he should have pitched him a lot more at the end, particularly in the 4-game massacre. I mean, we're talking about games from 40 years ago.
Right.
It's true. He wouldn't pitch Bill Lee because he didn't like him.
Right. And the other part from a very inside angle is great for the writers because he just loved to tell stories. In the era when you went into the manager's room and I know you had this with Earl in Buffalo too, and this was throughout the industry. You go in the room and they tell you stories for an hour.
Yes, and he was, he'd grown up in Cincinnati, high school with Pete Rose, went to high school with Jim Fry. Loved the racetrack. They loved him at Suffolk and Wonderland too. He spent a lot of time there.
Did they?
And in his later years, consigliere for Joe Torre. Of course, he charges Pedro. There's that. It's a long career.
Yeah. Well, rest in peace, Don Zimmer, age 83, 66 years in the game. Never a paycheck from anywhere else except I think there was one Gillette commercial.